Hey there, Web 101. A couple of things before we get marching here. For those of you who may have peeked ahead, I'm not sure if anybody did. Um, there was a session intro live here that was a holdover from summer. The summer session was only 7 weeks instead of 8. This is 8 like it normally is. So just in case anybody read that, or not read it, watched that, I still need a little more coffee this morning. So just in case anybody watched that and went, shit, that's only 7 weeks. No, the summer one was only 7 weeks. This one is 8 weeks like it should be. So there's nothing there to worry about. Here in session 7, you'll notice a couple of really fantastic things. Number one, there is no more material from the text. Later this week, what I'll do is I'll get to you and I will drop it as a video, and I'll let you know via messages. I'll put a recap out there for for chapter 12, which really talks about server side and client side, web design and web interaction. But there's no deliverable for that chapter. So I will message everybody when that gets up there. I had one, I was not pleased with it. I want to do another one that'll be better. So you'll get note on that when that rather is up there. For this session, really, there are only two deliverables. Number one, there is a section in the module here about Photoshop. Now, I use Photoshop the way all of us pretty typically use words like Kleenex or Xerox, right? It's as ubiquitous a software as is possible, so much so that any other software of its kind is referred to by its name. I do not mean for you to go out and pay for a Photoshop. It's really not Photoshop. You can buy a Creative Cloud 1 month access, and I don't want you to have to do that. I don't want you to have to go out and sign up for the 1 week trial, which requires you to put in a credit card so that just in case you forget, Adobe can charge you for it. I'm not aiming to do that. The piece of software we will use, and there is a download link here in the module, is called GIMP. It is a phenomenal, nearly line for line copy of Adobe Photoshop. I have no idea how a piece of software can exist that is so blatantly a ripoff of Photoshop. There must be pictures or video of Photoshop, or I mean like Adobe executives out there that, you can't sue us about this, or these pictures get out. So GIMP is rather a nearly feature for feature copy of Photoshop. Now, I understand that that's not entirely true. People in the business will tell you there's a reason you pay for Photoshop, and there is a reason you pay for full Photoshop, and that's because no other software enjoys such a dense environment of add-ons and like superchargers, essentially. So GIMP does enjoy some of those, but nowhere near the breadth and width of phenomenal add-ons that Photoshop can do. One of the other big differentiators that's happening now is Photoshop, or rather many of the Adobe products, through what's called their Sensei AI. It learns based on users' habits, and it's not just individual user habits. Sensei gets to actually use all of the Creative Cloud. So it's the millions of interactions that it can log from the millions of people who use Photoshop CC, which is Creative Cloud, and actually all of the Creative Cloud suite. So what happens is Photoshop learns based on the patterns of behavior that professionals use, and the learning software says, hey, look, for a professional consumer or for an average consumer, we can start to do these things for you. So there's things like automatic masking now, where the AI can go through and say, is this your subject? And most of the time it is your subject. Even if they have complex things like lots of hair, I would not be a complex subject for that. Even if, there's a dog, a baby, and a bunch of backgrounds, and you're like, this is my subject. You tap on that button and boom, the rest of it becomes masked out. That kind of smarts, those kinds of heavy lifting cannot be done by free software. So that's why Photoshop enjoys the ability to say, you want to use it, fork over every month to be able to do so. But it's a 28-minute video. This is what I would suggest doing is, number one, going out and downloading GIMP first and installing it. It's literally a 3-click install. One word of caution is the first time you run GIMP, it takes a long time to get up and running. It is all written in JavaScript, and on a Mac or on a PC, it doesn't really install. It's an installer package. So it all lives inside of one big, and I mean big, folder. So the first time you start up Photoshop, it takes GIMP rather, it takes a long time to get going. So give it time. I actually, every time I install it on a new Mac, I'll, run it and then go make a cup of coffee and come back, because that's about how long it takes to run, especially on older machines, none of which of these are that old, but you get the idea. Then start going through the video. It's a life hacker series I have for you there. It's getting a little old, but it's still really fantastic. And what I can tell you is that in 30 minutes, it'll take a little longer because you'll have to pause and rewind and things like that. I understand. But roughly speaking, let's say it takes 2 hours. In 2 hours, what you will have been exposed to is 80% of what a professional would need in Photoshop. So I think that that's a hell of a payout, because what that enables you to do is become familiar with some of the really deep tools that people rely on, that graphic engineers rely on, that graphic designers rely on, that photographers rely on. And all of those things are fantastic additions to your toolkit for whatever kind of career it is you're looking to expand on with a class like this. So there is an assignment in there. It is photoshopping yourself into a famous picture. What I'll tell you about a famous picture is, don't make it gross, and I'm going to be okay with it. So like I've had people photoshopping themselves into Abbey Road, the album cover, fine. I've had people photoshopping themselves into, works of art, fine. Only one time have I ever had to use, it's called asshole tax in there. And that's when somebody was being an asshole. There's no way around it. So, once upon a time, 1,000 years ago, somebody with a very gnarly beard photoshopped themselves into the Venus de Milo, which you could say, borders on, what's appropriate for school. I actually don't think that that's a problem, but it was hilarious because here's an individual with a huge gnarly beard on, the Venus de Milo. That stuff is funny. Somebody else initiated asshole tax by taking something that was clearly pornographic. Like, there was no way that anybody would mistake this for art and put their face on there. Asshole tax. I take the points away, and I take extra points for being an asshole. I've only had to initiate it one time. I don't expect it to be any of you, but if I don't give you the asshole tax warning, somebody thinks they can be an asshole. So I'm mentioning it here. The other piece of the assignment, or the other assignment rather, due here is layout 2, where you will take what you started with layout 1, so you can just reuse that file. And what you're going to do is you're going to extend to it the functionality of mobile design with media queries, your tablet media query, your smartphone media query. I'm pointing at the tablet I'm recording this on right now. That doesn't help you out any. What I mean for you to be able to do is, when you are done with layout project 2, you'll be able to use that as the skeletal structure that you can use for your final project. I'm going to get the final project description to you in the middle of this week. I know it's early. I know we're just starting 7. That means we have all of 8. I believe it's October 12 that everything is due. But what I want you to do is be able to look at that project and say, we had plenty of time to be able to do it. So in the middle of this week, you'll see the final project with its final project description posted here so that you can get a start on it, so that you don't have to feel like when you're trying to put it together. So 2 pieces of work for this week. There is the Photoshop, which is GIMP. Photoshop, again, is just Kleenex or Xerox. It's so ubiquitous a software, we can use its name to instantly convey its function. So 1 is Photoshop, 2 is Layout 2. If anybody has, as always, any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and message me, because the earlier, the better. If anybody has any outstanding corrections and revisions from chapters 7, 8, and 9, get those to me by the end of this week. Starting October 5, I'm not going to take any, so that's next week. I'm not going to take any late or revision work. What I want you to do is be able to spend that last week laser focused on only your final project. So those things are coming down the pike here. We're moving pretty quick. Everybody's moving pretty quickly right along, though. That's very encouraging for me. And we'll see you again in the middle of this week sometime. I will send a message to everybody when I publish that. So have at it, and good luck, and reach out if you need anything.